Ah, my retinas!
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Forum BX257, here to bring you another 1980s G.I. Joe tour review. And today I'll be taking a look at the G.I. Joe's explosive expert, the 1988 Lightfoot. Not to be confused with Gordon Lightfoot. Anyway, Lightfoot here makes his first comic book appearance in the Old Nova comic run of G.I. Joe spin-off, G.I. Joe Special Missions number 13. And makes his first appearance in the regular title in issue number 82. Unfortunately, like a lot of 1987 and 1988 characters, he makes no cartoon appearances.
Taking a look at Lightfoot's accessories first, you can just see how he's holding on to this thing and how it's hooked up. As a matter of fact, how he's holding on to it is kind of unusual. It's kind of like he's holding on to handlebars. And because this is supposed to be a mine detector unit, you would think that it would be a traditional rod or something that would be at least close to the ground. And yet he's holding it quite far away. I'll just disconnect it to take a better look at it. And this is very unusual. I've never seen anything like this. This whole portion being the handlebar, and I guess mechanical portion, with this large cross-shaped thing being a sensor bar or sensor dish. And this slot on only one side is where the hose went into. A very unique hose. It's not actually a hose, but actually kind of flat. And it just plugged into the back portion of the backpack. And that's all this thing was called. It was just called a backpack. Before I get into that any further, you'll notice that the mine detector unit actually had pegs at the back here. So it could peg onto the backpack for storage. Of course, you can keep this thing hooked on, and it will just sort of wrap around like that. I'm not going to do that right now, though. The backpack itself has a lenticular sticker on it, which means that if you move it around, it simulates how this thing would look, sort of like it inside, almost like this thing had a glass cover. You can see inside the guts of this backpack, which I guess sort of powers the mine detector or recharges it maybe, I don't know. But you also see that it does have a tiny little crossbar, just like the front of this thing had. So I guess that's a nice little repetitive detail there. Just to let you know that these things actually did go together. Lightfoot also came with a very complicated helmet. It's a two-piece helmet, and the contents list on the card calls this a night vision helmet. Very interesting. Have these little painted eyes on here, and antenna, which you could pop off. They're not meant to be popped off like this, but they can be. Another very interesting thing is on these cheek guards. On the right side, there is a little upraised bit here, and I suppose that's supposed to be a microphone. So I guess he could call back to his unit or call back to his robot. Probably what these antennas are also for. Call back to his robot, yeah, that's what this thing is supposed to be. When I first got Lightfoot, I just assumed that this was a remote control for the robot. But looking at the contents list, that's not what this thing is for. And that's all this thing is. It's just called robot on the contents list. It doesn't have any like fake wheels underneath the treads, but it's rather small and you can just sort of pretend that it rolls along. And like the backpack, it also had this lenticular sticker. So you're seeing the inside guts moving around. The robot itself has no other gimmick other than the sticker. You would think that there would be maybe like a protruding probe or maybe an arm. It didn't even really have to have been articulated. It just should have been molded in there. But that's all this thing is. It's just a little thing on treads. I'm not really sure how you were supposed to use it because it doesn't say so on the file card. It doesn't even mention him having a robot on the file card. It's like he just has this random little droid buddy as if he's like somebody out of Star Wars. So here's a look at how this thing looks when it's hooked up to his backpack with the hose on. My example doesn't really stay on there very well, but it is meant to stay on there, and it does, well, fingers crossed, anyway. Unfortunately, this is one of the biggest problems with the figure, is his color scheme, because there's so many bright clashing primary colors. You have this reddish orange robot, his mainly bright yellow outfit. He has this bright forest green on him, as well as his backpack, and then he has this odd bright blue helmet out of nowhere. It just sort of, well, I don't want to say that it clashes and looks terrible, but it just looks very, very strange as a color combination. I would have liked it if they would have made his helmet green. On the package art, you can see that it might have been a two-piece helmet design, which part of the pieces might have been green and some might have been blue. So maybe that would have toned down and made this integrate a little bit better, or maybe his mine detector unit was supposed to be blue or something like that. But it just like, you have these just bright colors just coming out of nowhere, and it just doesn't go with the rest of his outfit. I know a lot of people are kind of curious as to why he has these black stripes down the side of his pants. As a matter of fact, turning once again back to the original card art, you can see that he would have had black stripes down his arms as well. Unfortunately, we just don't get that paint job on here. We're taking this thing off. And that's what, these things are actually supposed to be hazard stripes. Now, I know you're thinking of the black and yellow hazard stripes. I mean, if you just ignore that the rest of his pants are yellow, if you just look at the stripe just by itself, that's what it's supposed to be, a black and yellow stripe. It's just that unfortunately there isn't a clear delineation between the black and yellow of the stripe and the yellow of the rest of his outfit. And as far as hazard stripes go, they're actually supposed to be diagonal, not straight on his body like this. And that's where I'll excuse the whole bright yellow and maybe even altogether the bright colors that he sports, is because, he's in hazard duty, so he's wearing a hazard duty uniform, which is generally very bright. I can excuse that. But the blue helmet just kind of gets me every time, especially the random reddish orange robot. Again, if these two things were all just green, I would have thought this would have looked quite a bit better. It's still very odd, still very, well, sci-fi, considering he's supposed to be detecting mines and explosives and things like that, where he has this very unusual, I mean, admittedly very nicely sculpted stuff. I mean, it certainly looks, very well done, and certainly not half-assed in any regard. But it's not really very traditional looking stuff that he has on him. Well, the only traditional looking stuff he has on him are the grenades right there on his front chest. Another thing a lot of collectors do kind of complain about, having explosives on yourself when you're an explosive expert. This is supposed to be, your armor to protect you from a blast, and yet you have explosives on there. I mean, technically speaking, a grenade should not go off if it's damaged while it has its pin in it, but still, visually it looks a little bit strange. And going over the figure itself, it does have a few things which should have been painted in, but really aren't. Like he has his whole belt is painted in, but he has these additional straps. I'm guessing they're part of the part of the armor, holding the armor on. I'm not really sure why he only has straps around his crotch, but they're not painted in. And actually, that's a good thing for once, because I don't know why you would have straps just randomly on your crotch, and yet he doesn't have any of them holding around his shoulders or back. That would have made more sense, or at least sideways from the torso, holding the front armor on. And lastly, one very interesting design choice. While Lightfoot's name implies that he has to tread lightly around mines and other bombed out areas, one thing that I think the designers had a little bit of fun with was his actual feet. He has very unusual shoes or boots here, which almost seem to have little pads on them. So I'm kind of wondering whether they thought that maybe he would have specialized boots which would, I guess, distribute his weight whenever he puts his foot down, almost like a spring or a cushion. As far as being a G.I. Joe minesweeper goes, Lightfoot takes over from the 1983 Tripwire, who, as you can see, has a much more practical, more army-like outfit, as opposed to the very hazard duty, but also very kind of sci-fi look to Lightfoot. As far as an explosive expert goes, explosive ordnance disposal is the area of the 1987 Tunnel Rat, who again looks very practical and very military. But going ahead in years, we also get the Sky Patrol Static Line, who, believe it or not, is not only a paratrooper, but also an explosive expert as well. And he is a very strange mishmash of very odd styles here. So one could say that he's actually gone even further into the realm of looking a bit more sci-fi than even Lightfoot does. So just who would Lightfoot's opposite number on the Cobra side be? Well, it's a little bit hard to say because, well, Cobra is a little bit more about making bombs rather than dismantling them. But if I would hazard an intelligent guess, I would go with the 1987 Techno Viper, as they are primarily there to fix things. But they can also take things apart, such as G.I. Joe defenses, bombs, and mines. But if we want to go with an explosive expert that we all know from the Cobra side, it would have to be 1984 Firefly. I'm sure that he could at least take apart his own bombs, if not anybody else's. If you're looking for a Lightfoot on the aftermarket, he is really not a very popular figure for the 1988 year, despite the fact that he comes with a lot of very interesting accessories, and the fact that a lot of these accessories are often missing. You'll have a hard time finding the hose. Sometimes the antenna from the back of his helmet is popped off. The lenticular stickers on both the backpack and the robot are sometimes missing. And you have to make sure that the entire antenna on the robot is still there, because that is something which cracks off very easily. You can just see how he's is mainly bright red. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind-the-scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then!